How's it going, guys? Cody back again, dropping yet another video. Right, guys, as you can see from the title of this video, it's about how many transgender prisoners are there in the system. Now, I'm going to read the story, guys, as always, and I'll put a link in the description. Claim. The claim group Fair Play for Women claim 41% of transgender women in prisons are convicted sex offenders. A reality check verdict says a government survey has counted 125 transgender prisoners in England and Wales, but the Ministry of Justice say these figures are not yet a reliable reflection of the true numbers. The MOJ says 60 of them have been convicted of one or more sexual offences, but it didn't identify their gender. So whether it be male to female or female to male transitions. There are likely to be more trans inmates on shorter sentences who are less likely to be sex offenders who don't show up in this data. The background. The management of transgender prisoners is the subject of an often highly charged debate. Trans people identify with the gender that is different to the one they were assigned at birth. So someone assigned male at birth may identify as a transgender woman. Currently, to get that gender legally recognised, trans people must obtain a GRC, which is a gender recognition certificate. As a reality check has explained, the process is complex and can take more than 5 years. The government has launched a consultation to make the process in England and Wales less intrusive and more bureaucratic for transgender people, but adds, we are not necessarily proposing self-declaration of gender. It is in the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender Action Plan that accompanies the consultation. The government says it will ensure that transgender prisoners are treated fairly, decently, lawfully, with their rights respected. In Scotland, a similar consultation ended in March. Some worry that if the system is not changed, it could make it easier for dangerous prisoners to self-identify as transgender women and be moved to another prison. Listen, let me get my fucking wig. Yeah, man. Right. So then it says, but others argue that transgender prisoners are among the most vulnerable inmates and are let down by the current system, leading to a higher risk of suicide and self-harm. The claim. The claim group Fair Play for Women believes that promoting transgender rights could be harmful for women. Its spokeswoman Nicola Williams said, if a proposed law changes could allow a group of dangerous offenders to be transferred to women's prisons, we need to know what risk that poses. We need data and facts that need to be assessed. Fair Play for Women examined the individual prison inspection reports and concluded 41% of women in prison, transgender women, in prisons, are convicted sex offenders. Its claim reports that by several news outlets. If more than 40% of transgender prisoners were sex offenders, that would be disproportionately high. According to the most recent data, 19% of all prisoners are serving time for a sexual offence. Some have taken issue with the way the group reached its conclusions, so to get a clearer picture, we went in search of the official figures. How many transgender prisoners? It's difficult to know exactly how many transgender prisoners there are. We asked agencies responsible across the UK. In April 2017, 17 of Scotland's 7,463 prisoners were transgender, according to the Scottish Prison System, or the SBS. What is it? Northern Ireland's prison service chose not to tell us whether it counts trans prisoners, but according to parliamentary research, it is not aware of any. In England and Wales, the Ministry of Justice now conducts an annual count of prisoners. Between March and April 2017, it counted 125 transgender inmates in England and Wales. In a prison population of 85,513, it counted 70 over the same period in 2016. The current prison populations are down to about 83,000. These are the best available figures, but then they're far from perfect. The Ministry of Justice points out the numbers may change as prisoners constantly enter and leave the system. It says the figures are not yet a reliable reflection of the numbers and location of prisoners in the same estate. The MOJ can't count inmates who have not told prison staff they are transgender, nor does it count prisoners who have already been given a gender recognition certificate. About 250 to 350 GRCs, or gender recognition certificates, are issued each year across the United Kingdom. 4,910 since 2005. The survey only counts prisoners who have already had a case conference, a meeting of senior manager and other officials to decide how to manage the trans person within the prison estate. These are likely to be prisoners serving longer sentences. The Ministry of Justice told us prisoners on longer sentences are more likely to be managed as transgender prisoners than those on short sentences. That's because there's little point in having a case conference if an inmate won't be in prison long enough to benefit from it. Makes sense. Prisoners' convictions. We submitted a freedom of information request to the Ministry of Justice. It said 60 of the 125 inmates it counted in England and Wales are serving time for a sexual offence. This is roughly half, but it's not the full picture. Remember, those 125 transgender inmates only include people who have had a prison case conference. It won't include transgender people who have identified themselves to the prison service or have already had a gender recognition certificate. Of the 60 inmates serving time for sexual offences, 27 were convicted of rape, plus a further 5 of attempted rape. 13 were convicted of possessing, distributing or making indecent images of children. 13 were convicted of sexual assault or attempted sexual assault. 9 were convicted of causing or inciting a child under 16 to engage in sexual activity. 7 were convicted of sexual activity with a child. 7 were convicted of indecent assault or gross indecency. Those numbers add up to more than 60 because some prisoners serving time for more than one offence. We don't know the gender of the victims or perpetrators in this case, as I've alluded to, whether it's a male to female transition or a female to a male transition. The Scottish Prison Service says 17 transgender prisoners it counted were serving time for a range of crimes, including some sexual offences, but couldn't tell us precisely how many had been convicted of a sexual offence. Longer sentences. The 125 transgender prisoners counted in the survey are more likely to be serving longer sentences. That's because serving short sentences are less likely to have case conferences, so are less likely to be counted. The MOJ explained that prisoners serving long sentences are more likely to be serving time for sexual offences than those on short sentences. Trans prisoners on short sentences who won't be in the survey are less likely to be sex offenders. That means that it is unlikely that as many as half of all transgender prisoners are being convicted of a sexual offence. Once you take into the account those transgender prisoners who weren't surveyed, transgender journalist and campaigner Jane Fay warns against reading too much into the available figures. The real danger is that the public are likely to misinterpret them in a way that will create an unwarranted hostility towards the minority under the microscope. The fallout in terms of violence and abuse will mean in some cases be significant. Managing offenders. Earlier this year, the Daily Mail wrote that trans prisoners can already choose whether they serve time in a male or female prison. That's not necessarily true because there was a woman, a transgender from a male to a female transitioner that was wanting to go to a woman's prison and she was stuck in a men's prison. Eventually she was moved to a female prison after an outcry from public and campaigners. So yeah, so managing offenders. So can they? That depends if the trans woman has a GRC, a gender recognition certificate. The National Offender Management Service says they should be housed in a women's prison. There is a provision for any female prisoner, trans or not, to be housed in a men's prison if deemed especially dangerous. It is more complex if she doesn't have a GRC. In England and Wales, she can only be located in a female prison if she has had a case conference. Case conferences are told to watch out for evidence that the offender's decision to transition is related to their sentence length or a way of gaining access to future victims. The guidelines for managing transgender offenders were rewritten in 2016 after the government commissioned a review. This is going on and on this. The report stated an assessment of a transgender offender's risk of reoffending should be based on valid, evidenced factors that relate to the individual or as for the other offender. We have seen no evidence that being transgender in itself linked to a risk. Risk assessments must be free from assumptions or stereotyping. The Scottish Prison Service told us transgender women would not necessarily be moved to a women's prison if it was judged to be if they were judged to be a risk to other offenders. In Northern Ireland, the Prison Service said it would make a decision on a case-by-case basis. James Morton is the manager of the Scottish Trans Alliance, which assists trans people in various situations, including behind bars, says the Prison Service isn't daft. They scrutinise each case carefully before an eventual move. There is a very careful risk assessment, full exploration of the person's history and current circumstances, and painstaking preparation. We don't know how other transgender prisoners asked to move prisons or how often those requests have agreed to. The Ministry of Justice has said it was unable to collate those figures for us. And that's the story, guys. Like I say, transgender, so what it's highlighting, the thingy too really, is that there might be people in the prison system that say they want to transition so they can get into, say you're up on a rape charge, right, and you've got no intention of becoming transitioning into a female, but you say that because you want to get into a female prison, so you've got potential victims. There are a lot of genuine cases, like I say, within the prison system. The fact the Ministry of Justice guys, right, who are in charge of all prisoners, don't know the numbers, I find it laughable, to be honest, and it just shows how unprofessional and clueless they really are. For me, transgender prisoners should be housed in the prison that they identify as. If they're walking around the prison dressed like a bloke and they're not taking female hormone replacements and things like that, then obviously they shouldn't be. But those that are wearing wigs and trying to wear makeup, example, when I was in Forest Bank, there was someone that they was bald here, but they had hair on the side, right? And they had boobs, or like they was developing boobs. They wasn't fat, it was female hormones they was taking, and they started to develop breasts, right? And people used to just bully him and take the piss out of him. Now, like I say, people in prison that are transgender, I don't take the piss out of them. I think prison's hard enough as it is without going through a transition period, identifying as a female or transitioning to a female, but yet you're housed in a male prison. I've heard a story out of Garth prison where there was a prisoner that had not had one of these case conferences, had a boob job and had a cock and balls, and apparently looked quite pretty. Long hair, makeup, but was housed on a man's wing. When she went to go to the shower, everyone was in the shower with her. People were trying to struggle, like there was, I think there was like 4 or 6 shower heads, and people was trying to get in there so they could see her tits and stuff, and getting hard-ons in the shower and making lewd comments and trying to slap her ass and stuff. Sexual harassment, guys. At the end of the day, she's identified as a female. Some people take the piss and say, "Oh, fuck them." I mean, the fact that they say that 41% are sex offenders, obviously that's just alarming. But like I say, you'll have to let me know what you think about that, what you think about the video. Do transgender prisoners have rights? So limbo, guys. You're either a man or a woman, but these are going through a transitional period. And like I say, prison's hard enough without going through a change. Like I say, and being, I've seen bullying, I've seen comments made and stuff like that. So I feel sorry for them in a regard. I don't feel sorry for sex offenders. I never have, and I never bloody will. Simple as that. I'm going to put a link in the description below. Let me know what you think. Possibly going to be on the news tomorrow, guys, on an interview about £10 million for the 10 worst prisons in England. But I will let you know in due course. On that note, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Cordial.